Welcome back to Beyond the Box Score. This is Mastering Matchups, brought to you by Jacob Gibbs and Ryan Heath. Every week, digging into start-sit decisions. We got a bunch of cool stuff to dig into today. Emeka Egbuka stepping in as wide receiver 1 against the Eagles. I'm really looking forward to that, but we have Chris Godwin coming back too. So what are the expectations there for those two? How much can we expect Godwin to contribute right away? Ashton Jinty, maybe this is the week that he bounces back and starts giving you the fantasy points that you've been looking for. Somebody's been giving you a lot of fantasy points, Roma Dunze. I'm really curious to hear Ryan's thoughts on this. I've got some matchup notes that I think maybe signal that this might be the week Odunze kind of comes back to earth a little bit. We got a lot of interesting angles. We're 3 weeks in. We're starting to get more and more data where we're feeling a little bit closer to understanding what these defenses are going to do. And so we've got a lot of cool stuff for you today. Ryan, how you doing, my guy?
Hey, I'm doing great. Yeah, you're right. There's just the perfect amount of matchup info now available to us to where we can either find the glory, find all the angles no one else is on, or we can just totally hang ourselves on small sample sizes. So I am very ready to do both this week. It's kind of a weird tipping point in the season. But yeah, let's get to it. I'm excited.
Definitely going to be probably a little bit of both. There's for every Dontavian Wicks call, there's a freaking Jake Ferguson call last week. Ryan had him as a top 3 tight end. And man, did he deliver. Shout out Ryan. Shout out Dan, the man. Of course, Dan is not here with us on these Thursday shows. We were a little bit late with technical difficulties today, and the chat is blaming that on Dan, of course. But it's not Dan's fault. There's also a lot of plug God representation in the chat. Love that. Thank you all for being here. And, of course, we miss our buddy Dan. If you didn't catch the Wednesday episode, y'all, you got to check that out. Dan and I did a breakdown of every single offensive line and how that's affecting the run games. So that's super cool. And I think that will go hand in hand with some of the stuff we're going to talk about today. Rush scheme data, how different defenses have performed against different types of blocking and running games. So much to get into here. Ryan, real quick before I'm new to the hosting game, so I don't know if this will be good content or not. I know people here are mostly here just to hear us give stats and everything. I'm curious, we're both coffee fiends. Have you ever gotten into tea? I'm doing a little bit of small talk, a little bit of banter here before I get going. You drink any tea?
Yeah, no, I've had multiple tea phases during my life. Usually so I guess fun fact about myself, I have TMJ issues, which is like I grind my jaw a ton.
Yeah.
Caffeine does not help with that. So in the off season, when I don't need to be at maximum productivity all the time, I will switch to tea because it's just a little easier, not as much caffeine straight to the bloodstream. I enjoy the taste a lot. So I would call myself a tea guy as well.
I've got some herbal tea today. Once I get to the 300, 400 milligrams of caffeine, the tea is here with even more caffeine to kind of mellow me out a little bit, get me calm down, get me really focused in on what Rye Guy's bringing us here. Probably having too much caffeine, but people need it. The people need their data. So Ryan, I just want to start with Egbuka because I don't know how to make sense of this. The separation scores aren't nearly painting the same picture that his fantasy production is. Neither is like the underlying target rates and stuff like that. But when you watch the guy, he's obviously very good. We knew that coming in. And then you see him out here with the grabs, just with the feel for zone defense and knowing when to settle down. I don't think this offense is really even played up to its potential, whether that's the offensive line or Baker Mayfield with a lot of accuracy issues so far. And so we get Chris Godwin back, Egbuka stepping into a larger role here. Give me any Egbuka thoughts you have. Obviously the matchup is definitely relevant against this defense, but you can take it any direction because I want some guidance on Egbuka. I don't know what to do with him.
Yeah, so I guess a couple different directions. First thing I want to say is just on the separation score stuff. This has become like my silent pet peeve that I'm going to start being a lot louder about, I think. The separation scores, guys, as cool of a stat as average separation score at Fantasy Points data is, and all the separation stuff that's elsewhere around the industry, one game samples of separation scores are not good ways to evaluate how good a wide receiver is. Like, it can be useful context if you're comparing to teammates, if you're comparing the same receiver to himself last year. There are good ways to use it. But like Emeka Egbuka ranks 72nd in average separation score in week 3 or whatever, therefore he's overrated. No, that's not how we should be approaching this. Pretty much any method of charting separation, and I will even say this about Fantasy Points, is going to somewhat favor guys that are winning against man coverage and also guys that are seeing more man coverage. And it's going to somewhat disfavor guys that know how to find the soft spots in zone, right? And yeah, as you're saying, Jacob, that kind of has been Egbuka's game so far. I'm not really taking any of the separation data as like reasons to doubt the talent here. For the matchup.
Can I push back on that?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, Sterling Shepard has a higher rate, and Sterling Shepard is the slot guy who's finding zone more and more often. Egbuka, they've lined up out wide a lot. And like, I know he's not seeing the same type of looks that Evans is, but Evans freaking crushes him.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is relevant. Like, most of the coverage in the NFL is going to be zone. This is a player who could definitely still be really productive. I'm not saying like because his separation score is lower than Sterling Shepard's or anything that should like knock him as a player. But I do wonder like what the upside really is if like people are getting a little bit carried away with it. So I'm curious in your mind, like as he steps into a potential wide receiver 1 role here, we don't know exactly how much Godwin's going to play. Is he the kind of guy who can take that role on and see an increase in targets and be winning in all situations? It might not be as relevant. I do want to hear your matchup thoughts because this week the Eagles, they pretty much are playing almost all zone. So take that any direction. I do think it is. Like, I'm not saying, Egbuka compared to Elok Iomanner, like that must mean that because Iomanner's separation score is so much better that he's better than Egbuka.
Yeah.
I'm looking at him compared to his teammates.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I guess to be clear, that wasn't really directed at you, Jacob. That was more directed at just everything I've seen on social media for
sure.
the last 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, no, I think it is a fair question of can Egbuka go outside and go win as the wide receiver 1 in the way that we have seen Mike Evans do for years and years. But I will also concede, I think his value in a lot of fantasy formats right now is kind of crazy. He's like a top 12 wide receiver in Dynasty right now on consensus sources. Like I have sold him plus a couple seconds for Ashton Genty. I've sent out offers to just get T-Mac for him straight up. Like, fully agree with you that the industry in general probably a little Egbuka crazy right now. But yeah, as for the matchup this week, I think it works more in his favor than anything. So far, the Eagles have very much been like a perimeter funnel / a reverse slot funnel, just with Cooper DeJean playing so lights out. By our schedule adjusted fantasy points per game allowed, Eagles' toughest matchup against the slot. So I have very little interest in Chris Godwin because that's my assumption is that he will primarily play out of the slot in his first game back if he does come. But yeah, Egbuka, I think probably has the best chance of any of these Buccaneers receivers to post a ceiling game, but I don't know that I'd be ranking him as like a wide receiver 1 or anything this week.
Can you real quick catch people up on what a pass funnel is? What you mean when you say pass funnel or run funnel? We got a question about that in the chat.
Oh yeah, sure. So anytime I say funnel, whether it's pass funnel, run funnel, slot funnel, perimeter funnel, that just means that defense is giving the offense more like chances or inviting them to do whatever that thing is opposed to the alternative. So a pass funnel defense, we see that offenses are generally choosing to attack through the air against them. A slot funnel defense, offenses are generally choosing to pass to the slot against them and so on. So yeah, the Eagles being a reverse slot funnel, generally teams have not been able to attack the Eagles inside this year so far.
Alrighty, so I've got Egbuka is pushing out more to, especially with Evans out, I think is going to be out wide on almost all his slots. He lined up out wide on all but one snap after Evans left the field, and with Godwin coming back, I think it makes the most sense that him and Sterling Shepard almost exclusively occupy that slot role. So he's going to go against their top corners, but like Ryan is saying, like maybe he can still win and find the zone soft spots here. And this defense has been pretty tough against the slot. They do have the personnel to shut the slot down. I've got Egbuka at wide receiver 15 ahead of Lad McConkey, who I want to get to next. The guys that I have ahead of him, I'm curious if you would push Egbuka ahead of any of these guys. It's A.J. Brown, Zay Flowers, Tedero McMillan, Drake London, and Jamar Chase.
No, I think I would keep Egbuka behind all of them.
What about Rome Odunze?
Easily give me Rome.
Right. Okay. All right. Let's talk about Lad McConkey then. Let's try to find the Lad McConkey line in terms of start set decisions here. He might be a flex decision for some people. Like I know, if you got a pretty loaded roster, you might be out on Lad after the rough start here. Obviously drafted him to be a starting receiver, and I think that he can still give you that. If you do look at the separation scores, he looks really good. He actually has better separation score, better route win rate than he did last year. I think better days might be ahead. He's got a Giants defense here that uses more man coverage than any other defense through 3 weeks, 47% of the time. That's per the fantasy points data suite. Good stuff over there. So we love Lad when he gets a man heavy coverage matchup. Obviously can crush against man. QJ Quentin Johnson has been more of like the Justin Herbert, finding him as the second or third read against zones most of the time, but he has elevated his game this year, looked a little bit better as a route winner. Quentin Johnson, that is. So Lad McConkey or T-Mac, Zay Flowers.
I will take Flowers and T-Mac over Lad.
That's how I have it right now.
Yeah,
I do. So I worry a little bit that they'll just dominate this game and they'll be able to run easily against the Giants. But like, if we get some Jackson Dart heroics or whatever, if it gets where it's like competitive at all, like Lad could put up such a huge game in this spot, and it feels like we've been like waiting on it. And so like that, I just wanted to bring that up because like, what do you think his like DFS rostered rate is going to be this week? Are people going to play him at all?
Yeah, so I will say this, and I'm glad you teed me up for this. I think Lad is an elite DFS play this week, and that is because both running backs in this game are going to be very highly owned. You're going to have a lot of ownership on Cam Skattebo, a lot of ownership on Omarion Hampton. Just because they're priced lower, these guys project for bell cow workloads, makes sense, right? I think Skattebo has looked especially amazing. So yeah, I get it, but also both of these teams have been relatively pass heavy. The Chargers are second in pass rate over expectation. The Giants have been a pass funnel. Most teams have chosen to attack them through the air. So I do think that kind of on both sides, this could be a much more pass heavy game than anybody's expecting. I don't know how much success the Giants will have, but I do think the Chargers will have success in attacking through the air. Everything Jacob said about the man-heavy schematic matchup rings true to me. And also the Giants have been quite a bit of a slot funnel this year in terms of schedule-adjusted fantasy points per game allowed to the slot over outside wide receivers. And yeah, we have this up on the screen here. This is just our whole schedule adjusted table that will automatically update every week, and it can just quickly show you which defenses have been vulnerable in which areas. So the Giants allowing a lot of schedule adjusted FPG to running backs, but also allowing a lot to the slot.
Good stuff. Yeah, I wanted to show the people a few of the tools that we've got over here. Like they also have the coverage matrix where you can look and see like here are the Giants number one in man coverage rate. And while I let the YouTube people get their eyes on this, Ryan, can you tell me who you're looking at when it comes to McConkey versus like George Pickens, Deebo Samuel? We're going to talk about Deebo later, or like Cortland Sutton. Could he push up? I like the matchup for him.
Yeah, I like the matchup for Sutton as well. A little bit more man heavy, which has benefited him historically. Bengals defensive coordinator Al Golden was always very man heavy at Notre Dame. He's leaned that way slightly so far this season. But I'm going to take McConkey over all of those names you just mentioned. I don't really have much desire at all to choose to play a receiver against the Packers over Lad McConkey. I'm a little bit concerned kind of just in general about this Commanders passing game. Against this Falcons defense where they have suddenly had an actual pass rush this year. They tend to play a lot more single high, and the Commanders are kind of without their single high beater in Terry McLaurin most likely this year, or most likely this week. So that's just concerning to me from an overall offensive efficiency standpoint. So yeah, I wouldn't be wanting to go Debo there either.
Ryan, you're getting flamed in the chat. They're saying that you just like to take L's if you're willing to trade Egbuka, who is like a back of the round 1 rookie pick in Dynasty, for the number 1 overall pick in rookie drafts in Ashton Genty after 3 weeks. That's of course ridiculous for you to do that. Generational prospect at running back, clear 101 this draft season, but hasn't even been a month and we're out for Dynasty.
Yeah, I'm the total donkey because the Raiders haven't been able to run block at all for 3 games, and Genty still looks absolutely incredible, is making guys miss just like he always has. Like, yeah, I'm the total donkey for selling the guy that is just getting it done on touchdown efficiency. Yep, that's me.
Ladd McConkey. We found the Ladd McConkey line. It's below Tetairoa McMillan, who we're extremely high on. We don't know if Christian Gonzalez is going to be back for the Patriots. Even if he is, you're still T-Mac over McConkey.
Yeah, I am. I don't think he fixes his secondary.
Right.
I'm a Patriots fan. It's been a rough watch. I'll say that.
So we got McMillan, we got Zay Flowers still over McConkey, and then McConkey is above Pickens, Sutton, Deebo Samuel. I think he's still a strong start. We're going to wrap there, take a quick break, and we'll get back with a few more start sits for you.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake,
or people appreciating your fashion sense,
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we are back. We're going to talk through some running back decisions. What do people do with Cam Skattebo? That is the question, of course. What I have pulled up here now is pass rate over expectation on defense in the fantasy points data suite, and you see the Chargers at the top. Not only are the Chargers passing more on offense than expected, teams have chosen to pass more than expected given the circumstances of the play. So this does take into account, Ryan, the fact that teams are playing from behind, right? And still, number 1 defense in the league in terms of opponents choosing to pass against them. We've seen it be quite positive every single week. And so that brings us to the Giants. We could see a lot of targets for Skattebo potentially. Maybe they design some screens to him and stuff. Dan, the man, is of course big Giants fan, and he worries a little bit that maybe Jackson Dart isn't going to be quite as likely to check down to Skattebo. So I'm curious where you're at with our boy Marshall Chalk in the matchup here against the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, maybe kind of a boring answer, but I think he's like a mediocre DFS play at ownership, but like he's a totally fine like mid-range RB2 to me this week, just off of projected volume. It's not like an amazing matchup just from an O-line versus D-line perspective. Like the Giants in our line matchups tool have a bottom 3 rush grade just because they have generated the second fewest adjusted yards before contact per attempt this year. But that like hasn't been a problem for Skattebo at all because he is top of the league in yards after contact per attempt. He's creating on his own pretty much every which way. I will also say, like, yes, while Dart may not be the type of QB to check down to Skattebo as much, I am more worried kind of about the rest of the Giants passing game. Malik Neighbors, especially. The Chargers play all of these too high looks that Neighbors has historically been much less efficient against. Maybe it's a slightly better matchup for Wan'Dale Robinson in the slot, but I think the Giants could just kind of be forced to be like this shorter check down type of offense this week, just because that's kind of what the Chargers do to all their opponents.
Yeah. Teams just have not run on them very much. And we saw it like the first week it was the Chiefs. They only ran 10 times combined between Pacheco and Kareem Hunt and did not have any success. Ashton Genty, 11 carries for 43 yards. But then we see Dobbins 11 for 83 on the ground this past week. And I thought the zone running from Denver worked pretty well. And that's what we've seen the Giants shift to a lot more this year. They were one of the highest man gap rush rates of any team last year. But I think maybe to complement Skattebo, I'm not really exactly sure why, but they are doing way more zone running this year. And that's what we've seen the Chargers struggle against, for what it's worth. As I look at this one, like, I do wonder if we're maybe getting a little bit carried away with Skattebo. Like, I would be fading him for sure if I was playing a lot of DFS this week. I do think there are other running back options. So let me talk you through a few of them just for like start sit decisions. Most people, it's like, obviously you're just going to play Skattebo, but for some people, he was their RB5 or 4 or something that they drafted, and maybe they have Javonte Williams or somebody else like that who's also been playing extremely well. So we'll start with that. Javonte gets the Packers. We're worried that CeeDee Lamb's absence will affect them for sure. I've got questions about whether Skattebo should be ahead of Javonte, J.K. Dobbins, or Chase Brown, who obviously people are out on right now.
Okay, so yeah, I would go Skattebo over Javonte for starters. The Packers have been easily the toughest defense to opposing running backs this year by schedule adjusted. Game script, obvious concern. The usage has gotten worse for Javonte. Miles Sanders has like 3 of their 4 carries inside the 10-yard line the last 2 weeks. So yeah, I prefer Skattebo there. Who were the other 2 guys you said? Chase Brown and who?
Chase Brown. And just so people know, like, it seems crazy, but the Cowboys are implied for 20.5 points this week, and the Giants are implied for 19. Like, the offensive environment truly might be very similar. I know it's been really, really good for the Cowboys, but this defense is no joke, and trying to take it on without CeeDee Lamb is a tough challenge. J.K. Dobbins was the other one that I asked you about.
Okay, yeah, I would definitely prefer Dobbins just from a game script perspective. Chase Brown, I don't think I would. So Chase Brown and like the Jake Browning and the Browning version of the Bengals offense has been like my biggest mea culpa this week, where I thought it was going to work or at least be somewhat okay. But after it took 1 week for me to kind of come off that take, where just because they can't block anybody, they can't have an effective run game whatsoever. That just makes it so any defensive coordinator worth their salt can just not even worry about assigning a safety to the box. It means they can disguise every coverage they want. It means they can cloud or shade any safety to double Jamar Chase or whoever they want on any given play. Like, I don't think every defense is going to do it as well as Brian Flores did, but it's not good for me with the Bengals. I'm just like selling and dumping stocks on all Bengals for the rest of the season.
For sure. The chat is wondering what you think about George Pickens. Not a good matchup. Without CeeDee Lamb, like, where does he land for you this week?
Yeah, probably more in like the low end wide receiver 2 range. To me, Pickens has just never been an especially high end target earner. I think he is a really great like boundary player that's going to command like 20 to 22% of the targets most of the time. And I really do think the Cowboys are kind of going to create the Jake Ferguson offense.
Yeah.
Like Scott Barrett compared it to the Cardinals earlier this week, and I thought that was pretty sharp, where it's like Ferguson in the Trey McBride role, with Pickens like in the Marvin Harrison role on the outside, just not commanding as many targets, but getting the occasional splash plays like that. That's kind of how I'm viewing this offense now.
Yeah, that Pickens, I'm approaching with trepidation in this spot. If he's your guy, if you don't really have a better option, I'm fine with it. I think he's in my top 20, but just barely. So yeah, I have Dobbins ahead of Skattebo. I do have Javonte ahead of Skattebo. I think that they're going to try to lean on him. I think we'll probably see more targets. But I think it's fair to put Skattebo ahead of him, especially given the slight difference between the implied point totals there. The guys I have immediately behind him are Chase Brown, Travis Etienne, and Jalen Warren. So talk me through your thoughts on Etienne and Warren compared to him. The Steelers have an identical implied point total to the Giants. The Jaguars are higher, but not much, 21.5 compared to 19 points for the Giants. And this 49ers defense has really been stifling everything, but especially the run game.
Yeah, so I mean, they've been stifling it, but also they are a run funnel in terms of most teams have chosen to run on them. I don't know if that's how the Jaguars attack them this week, so I think I'm with you in that I would prefer to play Skattebo. I see. You gotta give me one name at a time, Jacob. I've already forgotten the other two. You had
Let me
Chase
just-
Brown, who we talked about.
I'm just going to pull my rankings up then, because this is a really interesting range. It's Skattebo, then Chase Brown, then ETN, and then I have Jaylen Warren. This is where you find the Trey Benson line. I want him to be higher, but I'm worried about this matchup, and we haven't seen the usage yet. I think it'll be really good, but we don't know. And then it's a bunch of guys that are really tough to rank. Like, I think I need to push Quinshon Judkins a lot higher, and so we'll get into that in a moment. But Warren is the one I'm curious about in this matchup against Minnesota.
Yeah, no, I mean the role's great, but yeah, the matchup is about as tough as you can get. Like, yeah, it's kind of hard for me. I would just prefer Benson straight up to Warren if that's kind of the guy that we're debating here. Just because I have more confidence in the Cardinals' run game just to actually block people, which is, I know you guys have done a ton of content about that this week. Run scheme is like the one thing that I haven't dove into yet this week, but yeah, my general vibes, like with both of them having rough matchups, is that I would prefer to play Benson over a Jaylen Warren, a Travis Etienne, a Chase Brown.
Yeah, so check out that run scheme and run blocking episode we did on Wednesday. The Steelers were one of the absolute worst. The Cardinals weren't far ahead of them. We think that the Cardinals can be far ahead of them, but they haven't been so far. We saw this last year too, where it was a slow start in terms of finding cohesion in the run game. They do a lot of complicated stuff where they're pulling people a lot on counters and stuff like that. And they've just allowed a lot of free runners through the line when they've done that. And so we see one of the highest stuffed rates, one of the lowest success rates of any backfield has been Arizona. That's unusual for like James Conner, right? He's normally one of the most successful running backs, but it's not been the case this year. And so I just don't want any part of the Seattle matchup on a Thursday, on a short week of rest, like first week, trying to get Benson into a bigger role. I don't want that. And I know Minnesota is not an easy matchup either, but you could beat them on the ground sometimes last year. I guess I don't know if they're quite, the defense I think is good. But they're one of the teams that like really is aggressive and shooting gaps. But those teams often, while they do like limit yards before contact, they often give up a lot of yards after contact, because it's like if one person misses the tackle, then you don't have as many second level defenders. And Jaylen Warren is the guy, right? Like he is absolutely the guy to beat one guy and then spring it for an explosive play. Like he's very, very good at making people miss and getting yards after contact. And we've seen his role. So I feel a little bit better about him. And I think honestly, like he's really pretty similar to Skattebo. And I wanted to bring that up because I think that's probably a decision for some people this week. All right, let's real quick before we get to our next break, let's get into some of these deeper plays at running back. Kamara, it's been awful what we've seen. And so like, I don't want to have him lower, but I do think like if ever there's a matchup, this is the one for him, I want to talk about these guys, Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift, Travion Henderson, and Quinshon Judkins. Am I way too low on Judkins? I actually think this is a matchup he could win in, but they also could get crushed, in which case he's just not getting on the field as much.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the issue/dilemma with Judkins every single week, which is do I think the Browns get crushed or do I think they keep it close enough or ugly enough for them to just feed him like they want? Probably would lean a little more toward they get crushed this week. So I think honestly where you have him ranked is fair. I would probably push him up above DeAndre Swift just because DeAndre Swift has no upside as a player on a weekly basis. Like I would just rather take like the swing on Judkins and the game script being better than we expect personally. Travion's interesting because the Panthers have been much more of like a pass funnel this year than they have been a run funnel. I still don't think it's a great run defense, but I'm not sure it's like the amazing spot where we were always playing running backs versus the Panthers every single week last year. We don't really know in terms of the workload with the Patriots. Like Travion Henderson was getting the first cracks in some like practice reps this week, but like really who knows? So I think it makes sense to keep him behind like the hashtag guaranteed touches of Swift and Pollard.
Yeah, the Panthers have been good against running backs so far. I mean, it's a 3-week sample, so you don't want to get carried away with this stuff. But the only defenses, according to the Fantasy Point Stat Suite, that have a higher like schedule adjusted number here are the Packers, the Falcons, and the Texans. And then you find the Commanders. Here's another weird one. The Commanders are right here with the Panthers. Two teams that were run funnels last year. Dan really liked what he saw on film for the Commanders in terms of run fits so far. Just an interesting note to bring up for the Falcons. Like I know you're big on Mooney. I'm hoping that we can get a bounce back from this past game. And so that maybe this matchup facilitates it. We're going to take another break. Then we're going to get back and talk about that game a little bit more, talk about these running back spots. And then Ryan's got some dank data for us.
Absolutely amazing. Lamar dancing around the pocket. He does this so well. All the way for the touchdown.
Okay. Real quick, we'll wrap up on this game. Then I do want to get back to just two quick notes on Henderson and Judkins and their matchup. So we're talking about this Falcons defense here. The defense has been interesting so far this year. They're the most blitz-heavy defense in the NFL. We've seen teams attack them down the field because they're also using a ton of single high coverage and leaving themselves a little bit shorthanded back there sometimes with all these blitzes. AJ Terrell, their top cornerback, still not practicing, and then Terry McLaurin also not practicing. And so I'm curious if you have any thoughts or any angles for this game on Deebo Samuel, like any of like Zach Ertz, any thoughts there? We don't know what to do with the backfield really. Take that in any direction. I'm just intrigued by this game and hoping that the Falcons can play better to keep it competitive.
Yeah, I think I'm more just like down on this game overall. And some of that is coming from the schematic angles. Zach Ertz just a 15% targets per route run against single high since the start of last year. It's 40% lower than against two high. Deebo Samuel single high is like slightly negative for him, but yeah, as you're saying, kind of the way to beat this defense has been attacking outside down the field, and that the Commanders are just shorthanded in that sense this week. It could be Jaden Daniels coming off the injury. We had seen him not play like especially well through injury last year, which is not fair to him maybe, but just all of those factors kind of make me think this could just be a little more low scoring, a lot more pressure, obviously coming from the Falcons than we're used to. So yeah, I'm just not all that into this game in general.
Yeah, totally fair. And I think that's where everybody's going to be. So I was just like hoping that we could find something like, I don't know, Jalen Lane or something crazy like that. But like, obviously you don't need to go there. I thought maybe if you had like some Deebo conviction that he could be a big DFS play because this game could be a shootout. Like we know Washington likes to play fast. Atlanta at times has played very fast. So if these passing games play well, we get some big plays with kind of aggressive defense being played. It could turn into a sneaky shootout, and I don't think really anybody's going to be on it because they don't really know what to do with it. And obviously Atlanta let everybody down last week. But I mean, Darnell Mooney is like the guy. Like he's the perfect DFS play who can like pop off with some of these big catches, you know? Yeah. So I'm
if I'm playing someone from this game, like in a DFS or like sneaky start angle or whatever, it is definitely Mooney. Commanders have been very much a deep funnel. So 6th most receiving yards per game allowed on the deep ball this year. That's throws of 20 or more yards downfield, but the 3rd fewest on throws within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. Mooney has very much been the guy, as usual, that they are looking too deep. I mean, that's been like a criticism of Michael Penix this year in general, that they, for whatever reason, they just haven't been throwing deep downfield as much, where that was kind of his whole thing in college and at the end of last year. So I think like stuff could come together there. Mooney's like a decent play.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's wrap up with these running backs, and then you've got some Tyquan Thornton notes, and of course the people need those. So Trayvon Henderson, we don't know what the role is going to be. The Panthers have been better than expected, and they've been much better against man and gap runs, which is what the Patriots have kind of specialized in so far. Henderson, they do get a little bit more outside zone stuff going, but like I think I'm going to honestly just keep moving him down just pretty nervous about the spot. So I wanted to bring that up because a lot of people are probably excited. They drafted him with high expectations. Then we saw the snap rate was very high. And we know this Panthers defense has been gettable in the past. But I don't know. I think it could be a trap spot. So I did just push Judkins one spot ahead of him. Judkins is facing a Detroit defense that also can be good. We know that for sure. They're on the road. And so it's a risky proposition using him too. But they've been much, much worse against man gap runs. And this is also something you can find on the data suite. And this is what we've seen Stefanski and the Browns really lean into this year. So you see zone concept, man gap concept, and we're looking for the Lions. Here they are, 3.5 yards per zone run on 30 attempts compared to 4.9 yards per man run on 27 attempts, 37% success rate against zone, 59% against man. Dealing with small sample size here, but at least it's pretty much even. I just think this is an interesting angle. Like I think Judkins, if there's any path to the Browns, like keeping this competitive, it's like just controlling the game on the ground with Judkins early on. And that's exactly what they tried to do last week. So I did want to bring that up. All right, Ryan, talk to me about Tyquan Thornton. He's looked awesome lately.
All right. So the big thing here schematically is that the Ravens have been playing a lot more man coverage so far this season than we have seen them do before. With the exception of week 1 against the Chiefs in 2024, they also had quite a high man coverage rate. So we have gotten reporting this week that the Chiefs want to play both Tyquan Thornton and Xavier Worthy alongside each other. Worthy got a full practice in Wednesday. Both of these guys have very, very favorable splits against man coverage. Thornton for this year, Worthy for last year, right? So I think either of these guys could be the man beaters downfield. There's been so much emphasis on the Chiefs wanting to revive their downfield passing game. Ravens have also been a deep funnel, third most deep receiving yards per game allowed this season. So I think both of these guys are interesting. Thornton is cheaper in DFS, but I honestly think both of them are kind of fun, like high upside flex plays. And I guess like the craziest stat here is that Tyquan Thornton actually leads the entire NFL in air yards against man coverage this year with 183, more than Devontae Adams, more than Rome Odunze, more than Alec Pierce, Puka Nacua. So yeah, I don't want to like totally oversell this. I think it's most interesting like in DFS. But if you need like a desperate flex spot start, I don't think Thornton is like the worst thing ever, and that the team could just reduce Juju Smith-Schuster's route share to get both these guys on the field.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I have Thornton ranked ahead of Marquise Brown this week. I think that the matchup presents a lot of upside for him for the reasons that Ryan just presented. And I think, it's probably more likely that Hollywood outscores him. But of the two, like who's more likely to give you a huge week? I think it's clearly Thornton. They've been looking to him down the field. They even designed a few things to him last week to get him some more short targets. I think he's really impressed them. That's been like, I go to Chiefs camp basically every year, and like he was the guy who stood out from the get-go. Like, and that's kind of been the drumbeat all along the way. And then when you watch him, he's the guy who stands out. Like he's the one who pops. Whereas Hollywood doesn't really. And I think that's we might be onto something here. I know it's weird because Tyquan has been labeled as a disappointment for sure. So I've got him at wide receiver 51, just after Alec Iomanner, another trendy guy here. Just an interesting range of receivers I want to show people. And you let me know if anything stands out as off. People are asking about Matthew Golden. We've got some more trendy names here. Trey Tucker. I have one spot ahead of Golden in the matchup against the Bears, but obviously Golden has an advantageous matchup as well. Ryan, give me your Trey Tucker versus Matthew Golden call for this week.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go Golden here.
Yeah.
And it's because of matchup stuff. The Bears have been much more of a slot funnel. Their slot corner was still not practicing Wednesday. I believe by schedule adjusted, they are, most schedule adjusted allowed to the slot. I think it's probably a Jacoby Myers game. Trey Tucker's has been improved from talking to all of our data charters. Like he's definitely like a much more legitimate downfield threat. Is like using his speed like to set up opposing DBs more so than just like running fast in a straight line this season. So I do think Tucker's like actually a thing, but I would still go Golden just based on matchup stuff this week.
Yep, I see it pretty much the same way. I've got Jacoby all the way up at wide receiver 20. Not deterred by last week. I think this is a great spot for him. How about Michael Pittman? I think I am a little bit too low on him. I don't really know what to do with these Chargers receivers like we just talked about. So they're the two I have directly ahead of him are Quentin Johnson and Keenan Allen. And then Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison Jr., don't really love the spot for him. Like I could see Pittman pushing ahead of all of these guys. The usage has been good. And you're kind of intrigued by the matchup here for the Colts too. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so the Colts have been playing a lot more cover 3 this year than we've seen from them in the past. They're at the 6th highest cover 3 rate. I don't want to go super crazy with this one just because this is a defense that has like varied their schemes a lot. I don't want to totally bite into like an early season small sample that maybe they just happen to do that in the first 3 weeks but won't in week 4. But if they are playing a lot of cover 3, that is good for Michael Pittman. 17% higher target per out run rate against cover 3 since the start of last year. And it's also great for Tyler Warren, who has had over 4.5 yards per out run against cover 3 this year, ranks 4th best among all wide receivers. So yeah, both of those guys are guys that I would like be pushing up my ranks in like, managed league start sits. I also think they're clearly the two that you would want to stack with Daniel Jones in DFS. If you're playing Jones and you think the Colts offense succeeds, just because those are the guys that are playing in like their base 12 personnel. That's who the offense is succeeding through. Kind of a like random DFS angle, but also if you want to play like a Rams stack, which you should, the Rams look insane, project really well this week. It will be very popular. I think a good contrarian angle is to just play Josh Downs as the bring back. And the reason for that is he has very favorable splits against both pressure and just on third downs in general. So if the idea is the Rams, one of the better pressure generating defenses in the NFL, Colts haven't really been tested in that way yet. They have one punt all season. If they're getting pushed more into these third down drop back situations, that brings Josh Downs on the field more. He's like the guy they use on all these choice routes on third down. So I think Downs only as like a standalone bring back, it would make sense to save on DFS ownership. I would move him definitely up these start sit rankings as well.
Yeah, I'm down on Downs, which I hate that. I like a lot of these guys. His route rate is like 50%. He's in a different role than he's ever been in. And we saw one game where they designed some stuff to him, but I just feel like whether it's health or Tyler Warren, like it's scaled way back. And so people are going to, when I say route rate, that's the percentage of dropbacks that he's running a route on. I'm not talking about his snap rate. I know his snap rate is usually low. His route rate as a rookie was 75%. His route rate as a second-year player was 75%. He had just one game before this season where his route rate was below 60%. And this year it's been below 60% every single game. Like fantasy points data probably will have it a little bit different than the source I have. So maybe it's above 60%, but like it's down is my issue. There's upside if this turns into a shootout, which it very well may. And Downs is an awesome player, so he can produce at any time. But I don't see him like significantly differently than like Dontavian Wicks, who kind of has similar circumstances, right? I don't know, man. I like where your head's at. I always want to be in on Downs. Maybe I'm overreacting because like it's making me so sad that he's not featured. Where would you push?
Yeah,
I guess we could like he should be lower.
Yeah, I mean, if we're making the route rate argument, certainly.
For the listeners, I just moved Travis Hunter down to wide receiver 53. Go ahead and cry with us.
Yeah. But no, I mean, that's kind of what the take on Downs is for me this week, is that on a game script basis, Downs could be forced onto the field more and into a higher route rate. It's not really that his role within 11 personnel or on third downs has changed. It's really just that the Colts are playing a lot more 12. They clearly really care about like their run blocking from 12 personnel, which makes sense. Jonathan Taylor's running all over everybody. But yeah, the bet would be on downs that they kind of get pushed out of that comfort zone that they've been in for the first 3 games, where they have kind of just been able to stay in neutral base 12 and run all over everybody. Which, yeah, I also, to be clear, like the take is not at all like I think Downs is going to play in 12 personnel with Alec Pierce out or anything like that. That will probably be A.D. Mitchell. I don't think Downs is going to actually play in 12, but yeah, the thought is just game script related reasons. Maybe they get pushed into more of these third down situations.
Hope so. That makes sense. Let's talk about another deep receiver here, Rashod Bateman or Josh Downs.
Yeah, so I would actually have Bateman above Downs, and the reason for that is it's an awesome schematic matchup for Bateman. The Chiefs play a ton of 2 high looks, and maybe more than any like 2 receivers in the NFL, Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman have very distinctive splits against single high and against 2 high over a pretty long sample. So Bateman, even this season, leads the Ravens in target share against 2 high, 70% boost to his yards per out run against 2 high since the start of last year. And Zay Flowers is pretty much the opposite. He's always been the single high beater, but he has a 45% lower target per out run against 2 high since the start of last season. Chiefs have always been 2 high heavy this year. Last year, can feel very confident that that is what they're going to mostly play. So yeah, to me, that just means pinching Flowers and Bateman a little bit. Bateman can still win downfield. I think he has like not the upside of Zay Flowers, but like the big play upside that we've admittedly seen out of Tez Walker instead this year. But yeah, I think Bateman is like a more legit play than a Josh Downs, than an Alec Omenor.
And a Calvin Ridley. We've got a wide receiver 2 for the Titans, wide receiver 2 for the Ravens.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think like with Golden and Trey Tucker, it makes the most sense for this matchup.
Good stuff. All right. Rashod Bateman, definitely always in play, especially when you got potential shootout here against the Chiefs. I think that makes a lot of sense to move him up. Okay. I want to talk about the Bears. I leaned on Ryan mostly, but I did prepare a few notes on advanced matchups today. The Raiders are using a ton of cover 3, and we've seen this not be a good schematic note for Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze has been much, much better against man coverage. That's per the Fantasy Points data suite. That's per Matt Harmon's reception perception charting. The Raiders have only used man coverage 6.5% of the time through 3 games. So the Cowboys are the only team. The Fightin' Eberfluses is what I've heard their defense called, which I love. They're the only defense that has used less man coverage than the Raiders. And so as I look at this spot, I'm a little bit nervous about Odunze. I think based off the usage, you still have to, push him up into the wide receiver 1 territory. But I wonder if the usage might get scaled back at some point. As I've been watching them, like there's times where Caleb is not getting all the way through his progressions or is like missing players because he's so locked in on Odunze, which we love to hear as Odunze backers. But I just feel like the more they evaluate the film, especially Ben Johnson, who's like really emphasized him being able to like make it like have his eyes where they need to be, that this might be something that shifts a little bit. I thought DJ Moore ran pretty inspired routes this past week. I know sometimes he doesn't. I don't always say that, but I feel like we might see things shift a little bit more, and this is kind of a matchup that might facilitate that. So last year, 24% target per route run rate for DJ Moore, 24% for Keenan Allen against cover 3. Rome Odunze's rate was 15%. Different coordinator. I think Ben Johnson is probably the best cover 3 beater in the league. He like a ton of these, like the Colson Loveland looks, the Luther Burden looks last week, like are design plays to find the soft spot in cover 3 and just stretch it to its breaking point. And so that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Is I think we'll see more of those ancillary pieces be involved. This year, Odunze's target per route run rate is 21% versus cover 3, which is much better than last year, but it is down from 29% against all other coverage types. So I did want to bring that up. You're still starting him, right? But in DFS, like I don't know if I would be going there. And I do wonder if we might see things shift a little bit this week. And it could be a DJ Moore week if you want to get really contrarian. I assume nobody's going to ever be on him.
Okay, I love that you brought this up because I came to like a similar pathway with this Bears versus Raiders cover 3 matchup, but I came to like a different conclusion. So yeah, Rome still in the wide receiver 1 range, amazing sheer volume, 4 end zone targets to everybody else's 1 on the team. Like the clearly just raw usage, you want to play him. But yes, I am with you on Ben Johnson being one of the best cover 3 beaters. And the way that he does that is by upping all these concepts running out of the slot and also all these concepts from inline. So you can see in the fantasy points data suite that the Bears target shares are much higher to the slot and inline when they're facing cover 3, and they almost just fall off a cliff when they aren't facing cover 3. So that, like, to talk about the Ben Johnson slot cheat code, like that is very much a versus cover 3 thing,
which is the most used coverage by far.
Yeah, but especially with the Raiders this year, that's what they've mostly played. It's what Pete Carroll mostly played with the Seahawks in 2023. Like, can be very confident that's mostly what they're going to do, more than most teams. So, like, to that point, I want guys that are running slot and inline routes for the Bears this week. That's kind of hard because we have this like 4-way committee in that role between Zaccheaus, Burden, Kmet, and Colston Loveland. To me, it's just, I want to play Caleb Williams in DFS this week, and whoever it is getting the touchdowns there, I'll benefit from Caleb. I kind of like Zaccheaus, though, if I'm forced to pick a non-Odunze Bears receiver as part of like a Caleb double stack. Easily the most targets from the slot and in line among the Bears this year with 14. Has a favorable just cover 3 spread in general. Yeah, I like it's Zaccheaus that has seen the most volume. It's a low A dot, but I mean, for DFS, the guy's 3,700, which is like, you don't even need him to go completely off for him to still win a tournament. So yeah, I more went to Zaccheaus than DJ Moore this week, but I don't know if that means Scott Barrett told me I'm crazy, that it's Luther Burden season because he caught the touchdown and that I should shut up about Zaccheaus, but that I can't like shake the thought basically.
I watched all Luther's routes. Nothing has changed. I mean, his roll didn't scale up really. It was like up to 30% route rate, I think. They had a few design shots to him, but other than that, he was just running space, clearing routes. Maybe that changes, but I think most likely is they have this game and then they have the bye week, and then we're probably hopefully going to see more Luther Burden, maybe more Kamananga, maybe more Loveland, who knows. But yeah, I think Zaccheaus probably is the more likely to score points. I have him ranked ahead of Luther Burden this week. All right, let's talk about the other side of the matchup, something that's probably more relevant than Olomide Zaccheaus. Ashton Jeanty maybe gets on track in this spot.
Yeah, I think he could. I think you have been on this all week, or at least I feel like I've seen the tweets from you. But yeah, Jeanty's kind of entire problem is he is getting almost no yards before contact. I think only Chase Brown has been less fortunate in terms of run blocking. But the Bears are allowing a lot of adjusted yards before contact per attempt this season. The most in the NFL by the fantasy points data suite. We have it up at 3.1 adjusted yards before contact per attempt. Jeanty down at 1.13 over the season so far. I don't know if I want to play the Raiders this way in DFS, but I do think this is like a Jeanty bounce back spot. He's going to be more in like the probably top half of the RB2 range for me this week. I don't know where you're at exactly.
That's basically exactly where I landed with him too. I think you're still starting him. Is he somebody you would go to in DFS? Like if you're stacking this game up, is there anybody or are you just going with the pass pieces?
Probably just going with the pass pieces. Yeah, I like, as I said, love the Jacoby Myers matchup. Right. I think Geno's viable. I like the whole Bears side. So yeah.
All right, we got one more thing to close out here. We haven't really talked about QB or tight end much. Ryan, liking the Patriots a little bit in this spot. We've got potentially a weird like pass funnel here, not what we expected. Like we've mentioned with this Carolina defense, I do have Hunter Henry at tight end 7 this week, ahead of Juwan Johnson, ahead of Travis Kelce. How's that sound to you? What are you looking at in this spot?
Yeah, no, that sounds pretty much perfect. Would play him over Johnson and Kelce. Patriots surprisingly top 6 by pass rate over expectation this year, where the Panthers have been on defense a top 10 pass funnel, as you mentioned. Panthers also play a lot of cover 3, and Drake May's favorite targets against cover 3 this year have been the tight ends. It's been Austin Hooper on a limited route share, but a 25% target per route run. Hunter Henry right behind him at a 21% target per route run versus cover 3. Panthers have also kind of been a inline / underneath funnel, which very much benefits Hunter Henry over someone like a Kayshon Boutte. They've allowed the 4th most schedule adjusted to opposing inline tight ends this season. Panthers were a positive matchup for tight ends all of last year. So yeah, I really like May and Henry both ranking as top 7 at their position for me this week. I like that stack in DFS. The bring back is very easy with Tedero and McMillan. So that's just wanted to give a shout out because I think it's like an especially good spot for targets to just kind of funnel to Henry even more than usual.
Love it. QB6 is where I have Drake May. You know that Ryan and I stay sufficiently high on Drake May. Anything else, Ryan, to leave the people with matchup note wise? Are you ready to get out of here?
Yeah, I think that is about it. The only thing I would say is if you want more crazy matchup notes, you should check out Advanced Matchups, because I write an entire article about all of this stuff every single week. It comes out every Friday morning. It's over on fantasypoints.com with the premium or all-in subscription. You can use promo code matchups15 for 15% off any package over at Fantasy Points.
Good stuff. Go check that out. Go follow Ryan. Can you give him the Twitter handle? I don't know if you might have already done that. Sorry, I was looking something up.
At Ryan J. Heath is the Twitter handle.
Good stuff, Ryan. Thanks for being here. Thank you to all you lovely people. Please do like the video. Please hype. Please leave us a comment. Let us know where you think we're the most egregious with our rankings here. No Dontavian Wicks talk this week, but he is definitely going off, by the way. That's absolutely happening, because you're never going to be on the right side of Dontavian Wicks. That's just the way it works. Thank you guys so much. Like the video, subscribe, all the good stuff. Be on the box score. Take it easy.